The year was 1889, and the wind rolled off the plains like a whisper full of secrets. Dry Creek, Wyoming, wasn't much more than a speck on a map, a place where boots wore thin before a man's past did. And into this weathered piece of nowhere came a woman named Emma Fletcher. She wasn't the sort to turn heads with her looks, not in a place where men measured worth by the way a person could ride, shoot, or keep a fire burning through a snowstorm. But Emma, with her flour-dusted apron and steady hands, had a backbone like hickory and eyes that caught everything, even if they never said a word. She'd answered an ad posted at the Mercantile in Cheyenne. Ranch cook needed. Room, board, and fair pay. No nonsense tolerated. It was signed only with the initials RF and a cattle brand mark she didn't recognize. Emma didn't ask questions. She needed the work. Her daddy had passed, and her brother had taken to whiskey like a fish to water. There was no place left for her but forward. When she arrived at the Lazy R, the place was crawling with mud, man, and motion. Cowboys shuffled about in the dawn light, tending horses and hollering across the yard. Emma was shown to the kitchen, a stone-walled corner of the main house with a crooked stovepipe and a wood-burning range older than Moses. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work like she'd been born to it. The hands didn't say much at first. They were wary, like wild mustangs used to being broke more than befriended. But soon enough, the scent of hot biscuits and pan-fried bacon softened their edges. They'd pass her plates with shine odds, and she'd slide him back with a quiet, "Eat up, boys. Long day ahead." All except one. There was a fella who never quite fit. Lean-built, quiet as a church mouse, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that didn't match. One was a soft gray, the other pale blue like glacier melt. He didn't sit with the others. Took his plate and went out back most days. Didn't say thank you. Didn't smile. Just nodded once like it pained him to show he was grateful. Emma asked the foreman about him once, a wiry old cowpoke named Tom Denton with a voice like gravel. He spat a stream of tobacco and said, "That there's Luke. New hand. Don't talk much. Good with horses. Don't ask him nothing to." She didn't, but she watched. He never swaggered or shouted. Never lost his temper. Worked twice as hard and spoke half as much. And when the cattle broke through the south fence one stormy night, it was Luke who rode out alone and brought every one of them back before sunup. Wet, bruised, and silent as ever, Emma started leaving an extra biscuit on his plate. Didn't say a word, just did it. One evening, while the others were deep in poker and stories of saloon girls who never were, Luke wandered into the kitchen. Emma was elbow-deep in dough. He didn't speak, just stood there, hat in his hands, like a schoolboy caught in the pantry. "You need something?" she asked, not unkind. He hesitated, then nodded toward the stove. "Smells like my ma's cooking." "Haven't smelled that in a long time." Emma blinked, then offered a soft smile. She must have been a good woman. "She was," he said, voice low. "Made peach pie in a pan she kept hidden, 'cause my brothers were rough with it." Emma chuckled. "Smart lady." He looked like he might say more, but then he just tipped his hat and left. It was the first real thing he'd ever said to her. Little did Emma know, that man wasn't just another cowhand. And the pan of biscuits she baked each morning, that was the kindling to a truth about to catch flame. Days turned to weeks, and the rhythm of ranch life beat steady as a trail drum. Emma found her place among the cast-iron pans and flour sacks, her voice becoming part of the morning breeze and the clatter of mealtime. The men respected her, not because she demanded it, but because she worked harder than most and asked for nothing she didn't earn. Still, that quiet cowhand, Luke, kept her curiosity sharp. One cold morning, before the frost had even melted from the porch rail, Emma stepped outside to empty the dishwater. She caught a sight that stopped her breath short. Luke in the corral, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, muscles taut, training a green-broke mustang. He moved like he wasn't thinking, just knowing, like he and that horse spoke the same language. Gentle but firm, never yanking the reins, just guiding with that same silent strength he wore like a second skin. She didn't mean to stare, but she did. And just before she turned away, he looked up. Their eyes met across the cold, and for the first time he smiled. Not big, not bold, just enough to make Emma's heart tick faster than it ought to. That night, after the boys had taken to their bunks and the fire was down to a red glow, she found Luke sitting out by the barn. He had a harmonica in his hand, and he was playing tunes so sad. The moon seemed to lower itself just to listen. "You're full of surprises," she said, stepping into the edge of his lamplight. Luke looked up, not startled, just thoughtful. "Lot of surprises out here," he said. "Ain't all of 'em good?" Emma settled on the edge of an old feed barrel. "You're not just a hand, are you?" He said nothing for a moment, then blew out a breath through his nose like a horse worn down from the trail. "Ain't time to tell that tale yet." That should have been enough to make her walk off, but something about the weight in his voice kept her still. They sat in quiet for a spell, the kind that didn't need filling with words. The very next day, a man rode up in a cloud of dust and suspicion. Clean coat, city hat, and a sneer that didn't belong in the country. He strutted into the yard like he owned the land, demanded to see the owner. Tom Denton stepped forward, arms crossed. "Ain't here." "Well," said the stranger, "he'll want to be soon. There's a deal coming due, and I aim to collect." Luke had been watching from the paddock. At those words, he dropped the brush in his hand and walked over, every step deliberate. The man's eyes flicked to him, confused at first. Then they widened. "You," he said. "Didn't expect to see you wearing dust and denim." Luke didn't flinch. "Don't make trouble here," he said. The man spat. "Too late for that." And just like that, the wind shifted. Emma stood on the porch, heart in her throat, watching the pieces fall into place. Luke, who barely spoke, was known by men from the city, and not kindly. After the stranger rode off, Tom Denton pulled Luke aside. "You gonna tell her?" "Not yet," Luke said. Emma watched them both from the kitchen window. That night, she didn't bake biscuits. She waited. Luke came to the back door just before dawn, eyes shadowed. "I ain't what I said I was," he told her. Emma crossed her arms. "You didn't say anything." He nodded. "That's fair." Then he tipped his hat and walked off into the morning mist, leaving Emma with a pot of cold coffee and a head full of questions. After that morning, Luke didn't come in for breakfast. Didn't come for supper either. Emma kept watch through the kitchen window, her eyes drifting toward the barn more often than not. He was there, working like the devil himself was on his heels, hauling feed, mending fences, riding out with the boys on a long-range check, and coming back long after dark. But he didn't say a word to her. Not one. And Emma, well, she didn't chase after no man. She'd seen what happened to women who did, but that didn't mean her thoughts didn't stray when the kettle boiled or the stove hissed to life. Didn't mean she didn't notice the ache that settled in her chest like a winter cold. One afternoon, Tom Denton came by the kitchen, hat in hand, face grave. "You ought to know," he said, voice low. "Luke ain't just some drifter." Emma arched a brow but said nothing. "He's the owner," Tom added. "Lazy R's his. Has been since his daddy passed 2 years back." Emma's breath caught sharp. Then why the charade? Tom shifted on his heels. "Man's got enemies. The kind that don't just kill you. They ruin what you built." Luke wanted to see who was loyal, who'd stay when they thought he was just a hired hand. Folks act different around a man with a deed in his pocket. Emma turned back to the stove, gripping the handle of her iron skillet like it might keep her grounded. "And me." Tom's silence answered for him. Later that night, Luke knocked on her door. She didn't speak right away, just opened it wide enough for him to see she wasn't smiling. "I should have told you," he said. "Didn't know how." She studied him. "You trusted me to cook for a crew of 20, but not with who you really are?" He looked down. "I ain't proud of it, but I've seen what folks do when they see your name on a sign instead of your shirt." Emma's voice was steady, but there was steel in it. "You should have known I ain't folks." Luke nodded, slow. "I know that now." She stared at him for a long, quiet second, then stepped aside. "Come in. Sit down. Supper's already gone cold. Might as well share it." That night, over a plate of beans and cornbread, Luke told her everything. How the Lazy R had once been a run-down patch of dry land, barely enough to raise chickens. How he'd ridden fence for other men, scraped by, and sent every penny home. His daddy, sick and proud, hadn't taken kindly to doctors or debts. When the old man passed, Luke came back to a ranch near ruined, a stack of unpaid bills, and neighbors just waiting to claim what was left. So Luke became someone else, just a hand, not an heir. He needed to rebuild the place with trust, not reputation. Emma listened, arms folded, her heart a mix of thunder and thaw. "I never meant to lie," he said. "No," she said softly, "but you sure didn't tell the truth." He looked at her, eyes heavy. "Can you forgive me?" She didn't answer right away, but she did pour him another cup of coffee, and in that moment it was enough. Spring came late that year. The snow melted slow, like it was reluctant to leave, and the winds picked up something fierce, the kind of weather that made horses skittish and dogs howl for no reason at all. Emma and Luke had found a rhythm since the truth spilled out. He still worked alongside the hands, still ate most meals alone, but now and then, when the sun dipped low and the rest of the crew wandered off, he'd come by the kitchen and sit across from her. They didn't talk about feelings. Didn't need to. There was a softness in his eyes now, a quiet respect that didn't need explaining. But peace don't last long in the West. One morning, a rider came in fast from the North Ridge. Dust clung to him like sweat, and his face was carved from panic. "Luke," he hollered as he reined in hard, "you best get out to the east pasture. Fire." Emma stepped onto the porch, just in time to see Luke mount up and ride like the devil had grabbed his stirrups. Tom Denton wasn't far behind him, barking orders to the rest of the crew. Emma, heart pounding, ran back inside to fill canteens and pack rags. By midday, the sky had gone copper. Smoke trailed on the horizon like the tail of a dying comet. The fire hadn't reached the ranch, but it was chewing through dry brush fast. Luke returned just before sundown, soot on his cheeks, shirt soaked through. "It was set," he told Emma, voice grim. "Ain't no natural fire travels like that." Emma felt a chill colder than any Wyoming wind. "You mean arson?" He nodded. "Someone wants this land." That night, over stale biscuits and half-warm beans, Luke laid it bare. There was a man in Cheyenne, Confronting Harrow. He ran cattle, rail interests, and every lawman within 100 miles. Years back, he tried to buy the lazy are from Luke's daddy. When the old man refused, Harrow swore he'd wait till the land came cheap or came easy. Emma stared into her cup, the dregs of coffee thick as worry. "You think he's behind this?" "I know it," Luke said, "but I can't prove nothing. Not yet." She set her cup down with care. "Then we best be ready for whatever comes next." Luke watched her, eyes full of something that looked a lot like awe. "You ain't afraid, are you?" Emma gave a faint smile. "I've already lost everything once. Ain't much left to fear but the wind." They stayed up late that night, drawing plans, making lists, checking stores. If there was a war coming to the Lazy R, they weren't going down quiet. And beneath it all, under the scent of smoke and worry, something else stirred, like a seed catching root. Trust, maybe even the start of something more. The next week passed like a coiled rattlesnake, quiet but full of promise. The fire had been put down, thanks to the crew's fast hands and the creek's high water, but unease hung over the Lazy are like a storm cloud that wouldn't quit. Then he came. A black carriage rolled into the yard on a Thursday morning, pulled by two dark bays groomed cleaner than any animal in Dry Creek. Dust didn't dare cling to that polished wood. The door opened slow, and out stepped a man with a silver-tipped cane and a coat that shone like raven feathers. Confronting Harrow. Emma watched from the kitchen door, rag in one hand, spoon in the other. She'd seen Wolf before, clean boots, trimmed whiskers, but this man oozed control. He smiled the way a fox might smile at a coop full of hens. "Mr. Rollins," he said, addressing Luke, who'd stepped down from the corral, "I hear your ranches had some misfortune." Luke didn't blink. "Nothing we couldn't handle." Harrow's grin didn't fade. "Of course, but it does make one wonder. If the land's becoming more troublesome, might be time to consider selling. I'd make it worth your while." "I'm not interested," Luke said flat. Emma could feel the tension from where she stood, like a wire stretched too tight. Harrow tipped his head, and for the first time, turned toward her. You must be the cook. Emma held his gaze. I am. He looked her over like he was cataloging her soul. You've done wonders, I hear. Men don't stay where the biscuits are bad. Emma said nothing. She didn't like the way he looked at her. Not with interest, but with calculation. Harrow clicked open the lid of his gold pocket watch, checked the time like he was bored. Well, Mr. Rollins, I'll leave you my offer in writing. You'll think it over. Fire's one thing. Accidents are another. Would be a shame if the next loss was permanent. He didn't wait for a response. Just stepped back into his carriage, and it rolled away like a shadow swallowed by the sun. Luke didn't move for a long moment. Then he looked at Emma. He's making his move. Emma nodded. Then we make ours. That night, they locked the barn. Luke took to sleeping with his rifle across his lap. Emma cooked extra, stockpiled flour and salt pork. Tom Denton rode out to nearby ranches, feeling for allies. They were preparing for war, not with bullets and blood, not yet, but with grit, planning, and the kind of courage forged only by desperation. But even courage has limits. One evening, as the sun slid behind the hills, Emma found a note tacked to the kitchen door, scrawled in a sharp, angry hand. Leave now, or next time. It won't be your pasture burning. Beneath the words was a dead crow nailed to the wood. Emma's hand trembled as she plucked it down, but her voice, it stayed steady. He wants to scare us, she said to Luke when he came running. Let's not give him the pleasure. Luke took the crow and buried it behind the shed. Then he looked at her, his voice low. I won't let anything happen to you, Emma. She stepped close, touched his arm. Then let's stop waiting. 3 nights passed without sleep. The lazy hour was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The sort of quiet you get before a gunfight, when even the horses sense the air's gone sharp. Emma kept busy, cooking for men too tense to eat, oiling the hinges on the kitchen doors, hiding a loaded revolver in the flour bin. She'd never fired one, but her hands were steady. Fear hadn't lived long in her bones, not since the day she left Cheyenne with nothing but a name and a skillet. Luke hardly left her side, not in a possessive way, just watchful, like he knew the winds could change in a breath. It was on the 4th night that it happened. The dog started barking first, low, mean sounds that raised the hair on Emma's arms. Then came the shot. One cracked, then 3 more, echoing off the barn walls. Men scrambled from bedrolls, boots thudding on dirt. Luke was already out the door, rifle in hand, Tom Denton a half-step behind him. Emma didn't stay in the kitchen. She grabbed the lantern and followed, her dress catching on the porch rail, her heart slamming like a pan on hot coals. Smoke curled from the barn. Luke and Tom were already at the doors, dousing flames with blankets and sand. Inside, a bale of hay burned low and mean, meant to catch, but stopped short. Emma saw the kerosene trail, the mark of someone who wanted to make a statement. Tom found the print of a boot outside. Rode in from the east, he said. Didn't stay long. Luke stood over the mark, his jaw tight. He's not trying to take the ranch anymore. He wants to break it. That morning, Emma sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. Luke stood nearby, hat in hand, a storm behind his eyes. I can send you away, he said. Back to Cheyenne, maybe. Or further. She looked up. And let him win. Let him chase me off my own place. You gave me a job, Luke. A home. I ain't leaving it just 'cause some coward sets fires in the dark. His eyes met hers, and for once, the wall between them cracked wide open. Emma, it's not just the ranch, he said. It's you. I never thought, after all I lost, after all I buried, there was still a piece of me worth digging up. She reached across the table, laid her fingers over his. You think I came here just to stir beans and keep house, she said soft. I came here to start again. You were just smart enough to offer me the place. Luke leaned in, forehead to hers. Then we fight. Together. And fight they did. Tom rode to town, found a friend in the marshal's office, an old friend who still believed in laws written with more than a banker's pen. Emma rounded up supplies, wrote to the surrounding ranchers who'd been burned by Harrow's greed before. Word spread. By week's end, The lazy had new visitors, honest cowhands, widows with nowhere left to go. Even a preacher who'd seen too many funerals and wanted to stop one more. They weren't an army, but they were enough. And in the hills beyond Dry Creek, Confronting Harrow waited, furious, restless, and ready to make his final move. The morning broke slow, like it knew what was coming. Sky hung low and gray, wind picking up just enough to stir the dust in the yard of the lazy. Emma stood on the porch, apron flapping, rifle slung awkward over her shoulder. She'd never felt less like a cook and more like a soldier. Luke came out of the barn, saddled up, eyes sharp and distant. "Scout saw movement," he said. "Harrow's men, maybe 6 of 'em, coming from the west." Emma nodded, already tying her braid tighter. "Tom's up on the ridge, with a pair of the Nelson boys. We'll see 'em before they get too close." Luke stepped closer, voice quiet. "You sure about this?" She looked at him hard. "You a-skin me that now." He managed a half-smile. "Guess not." By noon, they were in place. Emma in the loft of the barn, rifle trained out the narrow slat window. Luke by the cattle pens. Tom and the others tucked in the brush. It weren't a trap so much as a warning. "We see you." The riders came in slow, too slow for cowboys. They wore slick coats and wide-brimmed hats, but they didn't carry themselves like ranch hands. These were hired guns, paid men, paid to hurt, and at their center rode Harrow. He dismounted smooth, boots crunching on gravel, his smile as oily as ever. "Mr. Rollins," he called, "still playing cowboy with your hired help?" Luke stepped out from behind the pen, rifle in hand. "You're trespassing. I'm collecting what's owed." "You've been trying to collect with fire and fear." Harrow's smile faded. "You think a few fence hands and a girl with an apron can stop me?" Emma's voice rang out from the barn loft. "That girl can shoot straighter than you talk, Mr. Harrow." One of Harrow's men laughed. That was his mistake, because that laugh covered the sound of a rifle click, and Emma's bullet took the hat clean off his head. Not a kill shot, a warning, but it hit its mark. In the tension that followed, Tom stepped out from the trees, flanked by 2 more ranchers. "You've got no friends here, Harrow." Harrow's hand drifted toward his holster slow. Luke leveled his rifle. "You draw, you die." A long moment passed. Then Harrow smiled, tight, cold, beaten. "This ain't over," he said, climbing back onto his horse. "You think you won. I've got lawyers, bankers. They don't need bullets to take what's yours." Luke didn't answer, just watched as the riders turned and left, the dust trail behind them a retreat-ridden dirt. That night, the ranch was quiet. Emma baked biscuits, not because they needed food, but because it felt like a return to peace. Luke joined her in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes tired. "You saved us." Emma looked up from the stove. "You gave me the chance." He stepped close, slower this time. Not rushed, not reckless, just sure. "You could leave now. Got every right. Town knows who I am. What I didn't say." She turned, hands still dusted with flour. "I came here for a job. I stayed for a home. But I reckon I'm staying for you." He reached for her hand, rough calluses brushing the curve of her fingers. "I was the owner in name. But you built the soul of this place." Outside, the wind died down. Inside, the fire crackled warm. And in the heart of Dry Creek, beneath a sky full of stars, a ranch stood tall, not just for the cattle it raised or the land it held, but for the quiet strength of a woman who baked, fought, and loved like the West was hers to claim. The end.